Hey there, my name is Sheldo. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making coffee cake. Picture a buttery vanilla cake shot through the center with a ribbon of cinnamon sugar filling, finished off with an extra crispy topping. It's simple, classic, and delicious. So why don't you sit down, get comfortable with your favorite warm drink, and let's make this cake together. Start off by preheating your oven to 325 Fahrenheit with the rack set to the very middle position. Then grab a 9" by 9" square baking pan. It can either be metal like this one or glass and ceramic will both work, though with those the cake might just need to bake for a little bit longer. In the written recipe, you'll also find the ingredient amounts to make a bigger 9" by 13" cake if you're interested. Then we're gonna line our pan. I'm gonna use parchment paper today, but foil will also work. Flip the pan over, place your sheet of paper, crimp to mark the sides, folding in the long sides first, up to where we crimped. Sometimes I like to cheat it in just a little bit. The short sides as well. Into the bottom of the pan, lift up, press these folds flat, fold the top tab over so it stays in place better, and repeat on the other side. Perfectly lined, ready for us to make our cake. First, we're gonna make the cinnamon sugar filling that'll go into the center of the cake. 75 grams or 6 tablespoons of sugar, 8 grams or 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour, 6 grams or 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. This is optional, but I do like to add an 1/8 teaspoon of cardamom, which I feel like helps to add nuance and depth to the cinnamon flavor. Also optional is a 1/2 teaspoon of cocoa powder. Just helps deepen the color of the filling. Give that a nice whisk together. Okay, perfect. Set this aside for now. Next, we can make the actual cake batter itself. To make this cake super moist, we're gonna use what I call the Roux method.
Hello, Editor Sheldo here. That guy was rambling too much, so I wanted to jump in and give a slightly more concise explanation. We were talking about a roux, which is spelled R-O-U-X. This is a cooked mixture of flour and fat, most often used to thicken things like sauces and gravies. So why would we use a roux in our cake batter? Well, the thickening power of the roux allows us to add more liquid to the cake without thinning out the consistency of the batter too much. This means an extra soft, moist cake while keeping a thick enough batter to hold up to that crumb topping without sinking or collapsing. Here's how it works. Flour is mostly made of starch. Starches exist naturally in this granular crystalline structure that isn't able to absorb very much water at all. When we add heat, the starch granules begin to relax and unravel, taking on a more porous structure. I guess you can think of them as almost becoming like little sponges. Even once cooled down, these structural changes persist, meaning that our now heat-modified starch is able to absorb up to 4 times its own weight in water. That's almost 10 times more water absorption when compared to non-modified starch. The idea is similar to a tangjong, which is a cooked starch and water paste used most often in Asian bread making for fluffiness. But unlike a tangjong, cooking a roux doesn't require adding that extra liquid. That's what makes it ideal for cakes like your coffee cake, where most of the moisture comes from other ingredients like egg and sour cream. And so yeah, I hope that makes sense. Back to the video.
Grab a neutrally flavored oil, so something like vegetable, corn oil, sunflower, etc. Add 56 grams or 4 tablespoons of oil to a heat-safe bowl. Make sure to use a microwave or heat-safe bowl because we'll be cooking this in the microwave. That's just the quickest, easiest way to do this, but you could also put the oil and flour into a pan and cook it on the stovetop. I just find it a little slower to do, so this is the most convenient for sure. To the oil, we'll add 50 grams or 6 tablespoons of flour. Whisk this up until it is smooth and lump-free. Then pop it into the microwave, cooking it for 30 seconds at a time, stirring in between until the mixture is hot and bubbling. It should be about 250 Fahrenheit at that point. Be really, really careful. Don't touch the bowl and don't touch the mixture because there's water in here. This will reach temperatures higher than boiling, so it will burn you. Be careful. Okay, this is after the first 30 seconds. You can see it's already started to kind of foam on top, but it's not quite vigorously boiling just yet. So back in for another 30 seconds. It is vigorously boiling now, and I would say that that is good. Let's measure the temperature. Pretty much 250 Fahrenheit exactly. Again, really, really freaking hot. So don't touch this. This is hotter than boiling water. It will really burn you. So just like be careful with it. Use a heat-safe bowl so that it doesn't break or crack. And now we just set this aside for it to cool down before we use it in our cake batter. Now grab a large mixing bowl like this one. We're gonna go in with 250 grams or 1 1/4 cups of sugar. To the sugar, we'll add in unsalted butter. So that'll be 112 grams, which is 1/2 cup or 1 stick of butter. I'm using unsalted butter like I usually do for my baking, but you can also use salted butter. If you do use salted butter, just make sure to omit the additional salt that we'll be adding later in the recipe. Okay, so I'm just looking at the recipe now and I just realized the next ingredient will be 3 large eggs at room temperature that will be added to our cream, butter, and sugar. It's really important for the eggs to not be cold because the cold egg will cause the butter to seize and you'll get a curdled, lumpy batter. I totally forgot to take my eggs out of the fridge. They're still cold. Let me show you what I do when this happens, which honestly is quite frequently. Super simple. Eggs into a bowl, and you just cover them with the hottest tap water that you've got. You want it to be hot but not boiling. Let the eggs hang out in this bath for about 3 to 5 minutes and they'll come right to room temperature like we need them to. Great. Where were we again? Then we're gonna cream our sugar together with a beater. You can also do this whole recipe completely in the stand mixer, just use the paddle attachment. Medium speed for about maybe, let's say 3 minutes or so until the butter is combined with the sugar. This will be slow going at first until everything gets homogenized. Once the sugar and butter are more combined, you can turn up the speed on the mixer. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 minutes. Our butter and sugar have come together, but it's not aerated or creamed yet. At this point with another cake recipe, this isn't nearly properly creamed together yet. We're always looking for the butter and sugar to get white and quite fluffy. However, with this recipe, because we took a portion of the fat and it's used in our roux as oil, there isn't quite enough butter for it to fully cream up with the sugar. So we'll just need to give it a little bit of help by adding in an egg or two, and that'll allow us to emulsify everything together and whip it together until it gets creamy and fluffy. Our first egg. Between each egg, mix on medium speed for about a minute until the egg is thoroughly combined. Then we can go in with the next egg. Okay, last egg. At this point, this is the exact texture we're looking for. It should be kind of lightened in color, be quite smooth, and a little bit fluffy, right? Just like that. If it isn't looking smooth, just keep mixing until it all comes back together. Add in 1 tablespoon or 15 grams of vanilla extract. Give it a quick whiz until the vanilla is mixed in. Next, we'll add in the rest of our dry ingredient directly into the bowl. I find this so much easier than dirtying a whole other bowl, putting the flour and the leavening and the salt and all of that and whisking all of that together separately. You just have to make sure to distribute the baking powder and baking soda very evenly into this wet batter. It can be useful to sieve the ingredients in just very quickly like this because baking soda has the tendency to clump. 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Anyone else hate the packaging of baking soda? I know I could just decant it and put it in another container, but I mean, it's a lot of effort. So I'm just gonna use it like this and complain each time. So that's 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. See the little lumps in there? Just push them through. And then 5 grams of salt. That'll be either 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, fine sea salt, or table salt. Use 3/4 teaspoon. Give this a really, really good mix to distribute the baking powder and soda evenly. Scrape down the bowl just to really make sure our leavening is spread evenly. Then we're gonna fold into this batter our flour, sour cream, and roux. We'll alternate adding them in, starting and ending with flour because that'll help us incorporate the other ingredients. We want the sour cream to be at room temperature as well so that it doesn't cause our butter to seize, which again, I've forgotten to take out ahead of time, so I'm just gonna give it a quick zap in the microwave. We're looking for 300 grams, which is 1.25 cup. Microwave for about maybe like 30 to 40 seconds until it is slightly warm but not hot. Check with my finger. Yep, that is room temp now. Just taking the chill off. And our roux. Just feel it and make sure that it's warm and not scalding hot anymore. And yeah, that is perfect. Let me grab our flour. Okay, add 1/3 of the flour, 1/2 of both the sour cream and the roux, then another 1/3 of the flour, then another 1/2 of the sour cream and the roux, and finish off with the last 1/3 of the flour. In total, we'll be using 2 cups, which is 280 grams of flour. So I'm doing 100, 100, and then 80. But if you're using volume, measure out 2 cups of flour and just use 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. Mix on low until the flour gets worked in. Okay, perfect. Then we'll add in 1/2 of this roux mixture and also 1/2 of our sour cream. Give that a light mix until smooth and combined. With each of these stages, we don't have to mix until it is fully homogeneous because we're gonna keep mixing when we add the next ingredient in. Go in with another 100 grams of the flour, or a third. Mix on low again. Okay, just until there are no more pockets of dry flour left. The last of our roux, and also the last of our sour cream. Mix, mix, mix. The last 80 grams of our flour, or the last third. And this time we do want to mix until the batter is nice and smooth. As with any cake batter, we don't want to over mix because that will end up giving us a tough cake. So now that there's no more dry flour left, I'll actually switch to the spatula to finish it off by hand. This way I can scrape the bottom of the bowl and also finish it off gently so that we don't overmix. Give this a nice little fold action. Go through the middle, scrape down the side, nothing clinging to the bottom of the bowl, and we're cutting through any pockets of dry ingredient that might remain. But honestly, that looks really good to me. And there you go. That is our batter done. So now we're gonna layer into our pan half of the cake batter, the filling mixture, then the other half on top. Then we'll scrape out this bowl and use the same bowl to make the crumb topping. That way we don't have to dirty another bowl. If you know me, you know that I hate doing dishes. My number one consideration when doing anything in the kitchen or when developing recipes is to minimize the number of bowls. I know that some of you guys are probably just as lazy as I am. I'm gonna use the scale just to make sure that we get exactly even layers, but if you're not using a scale, you can just eyeball it. You make it how you want. Half of this recipe will be around 550 grams. I like to use a scoop. What are these called? Ice cream scoops, dispensing scoops, serving scoops, whatever. I find these are nice for transferring batter. 530, I think that is good enough. I'm just gonna grab an offset spatula to smooth this out. You can also use a knife, spatula, whatever you've got. Sugar filling mix, evenly sprinkle it all over the top. I know it might seem like it's a lot, but all of it is needed to give us our full flavor and just a nice visible layer of the filling. I don't want it to look sad and paltry, so just try to make sure that it's as even as possible. Add the rest of our batter. We want to be as gentle as possible just so we don't end up with really wavy layers, though honestly, no matter what we do, the layers are gonna end up being a little wavy anyway. I like to dollop it on, doing the four corners first. The tendency is for the center to kind of press down and sploosh out, causing a bowed line, but honestly, it's fine. Like I said, this is your cake. We're doing home baking. We're not professionals, so I don't see the need to make everything absolutely perfect. Make sure to scrape everything off. No wasting ingredients. Just go gently and evenly easing out our batter into a single layer. This was one of the harder parts of developing this recipe, actually. Getting the perfect texture of batter so that it is spreadable, but not so soft that everything splooshes around and we end up losing our layers. So as you can see, I'm not struggling that much at all in coaxing our batter to the edges. But definitely in some other iterations of the recipe where the batter was thicker or thinner, this was a lot more difficult. Yeah, I don't know, just some of the smaller things that you may not think about when it comes to a recipe, but I don't know, I like to think about it. Make things as easy as possible for myself and for you, whoever, making this recipe at home. Set this aside and we'll make our crumb topping now. Into the exact same bowl that we were using before. If there's a little bit of batter clinging to it, no worries, no need to wipe it out or anything. Just make sure you scrape off the majority of the batter into the cake. 140 grams or 1 cup all-purpose flour, 24 grams or 3 tablespoons cornstarch. The cornstarch just helps make for an extra crispy topping. If you don't have cornstarch or don't want to use it, just go in with an extra 3 tablespoons of flour. 6 grams or 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, an 1/8 teaspoon of cardamom, again this is optional, and then 3 grams of salt, which will be 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, fine sea salt or table salt, that'll be 1/2 teaspoon. 150 grams or 3/4 cups of sugar. Give this a little bit of a mix, the same whisk that we used for the roux. Distribute the dry ingredients evenly. Then we'll add in 112 grams, which is a 1/2 cup or 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of butter. I like to just get in with my hands and rub in the butter. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Especially if your butter is cold, it'll be easiest to just go in with your hands and break up the butter. Mix lightly rub everything together until the butter moistens all of our dry mix. Obviously, make sure your hands are clean. If you don't want to do this, you can also use the mixer or like even a fork or something just to mix everything up. Basically, a crumb topping or a streusel, you're kind of just making a cookie dough, like a cinnamon shortbread. We just want to go until there are no more dry pockets of flour left and everything looks evenly hydrated, and when you squeeze it, it should clump together like this. We'll want to focus more of the streusel along the edge. The sides of the cake will bubble up and rise first, and that kind of causes the streusel to bunch up towards the middle. If we put a nice border there, it will get just more even coverage. And I'm not trying to like break up the streusel too much. Whatever clumps it has formed, I kind of just let them be. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just scattering. Push into the edges of the pan. Towards the end, if all you have left are the really small pieces, you can always squeeze again and break up over the cake itself. That will make sure that we have some nice big clods. You do want some variety in the sizes. And there you go. Wash my hands. All right, now we're gonna pop this into the oven and bake it until the cake has risen up and fully cooked through. So you can check by inserting a bamboo skewer, a toothpick, or a knife, and it should come out with barely any crumbs clinging to it. Definitely no wet batter. Depending on what pan you're using and your oven, the time will vary. Base it off of checking for doneness. It should take anywhere from an hour to an hour 15. After the hour mark, just start checking for doneness maybe every 5-10 minutes. And I'll show you what this cake looks like once it's done. Right, let's check on how this is doing. So as you can see, it's risen up nicely in the center. When I press on it, it still feels a little bit soft, but we can check with a bamboo skewer. Okay, so I have my skewer. I'm just gonna insert it right into the center, and oh, that's pretty clean. If it has just a couple of crumbs on it, that's still fine. Sometimes if it's unclear with the bamboo skewer, checking with a knife is an even surer bet. So as you can see, the knife has come out fully clean with just a few crumbs on it, and that means our cake is done. So that took just over an hour, I'd say. I think that was like an hour and 5 minutes. Let the cake cool in the pan for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then we'll lift it out and cool it on a rack. It's just a little bit too soft for us to lift out fully right now. And once the cake has fully cooled down, we will cut into it and see how it is. And oh my gosh, if you could just smell how good it smells in here right now. It's just buttery and cinnamony and just so good. Here we have it, the cake. Pulled it out of the tin. It's been sitting here for about 2 hours now, so it's fully cooled down. And finally, let's slice into it. Let's see, do we do 4? No, let's do 4 by 3. Yeah, we'll do rectangles. So we'll make 12 pieces out of this cake. Probably could have cut that a little more evenly, but oh well. Look at that. You see that fine velvety crumb of the cake? We got that perfectly even ribbon of filling. Really nice thick layer of that crunchy topping. Oh, I should have made a cup of coffee or something. Or tea? Ah, too late. Let me just give the cake a try. It's just so good. I hope you can hear how crunchy that topping is. If you have misophonia, I'm so sorry. Maybe skip ahead like 30 seconds. My mic is right here. Oh. I just almost drooled.
Okay, is this working? I hope it's working.
Okay, that's enough of that. The best way I can describe this cake is that it tastes like it was made with cake flour, but it wasn't. Because of that roux technique and the sour cream providing tenderization of the crumb, truly the cake is just so moist and soft. It's like a lighter, softer version of pound cake almost. You pair that buttery flavor with the cinnamon and the crunchy topping, a little bit salty. It's just perfect. This cake will store really nicely. Keep it in a sealed container and it should stay good for maybe like 2-3 days at room temperature. Though after the first day, the crumb topping will start to soften. So, you know, can't really get around that. If you want it to taste like it just came out of the oven, put the cake into the microwave and zap it for literally 10-15 seconds, and it will taste like it was just baked again. Before I finish enjoying the rest of my cake, let's wrap up the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had so much fun getting to bake together. If you do make it at home, please comment below and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear from you. Full written recipe will be down in the description below the video. You'll find not only the ingredient amounts for the 9" by 9" cake, but also for a larger 9" by 13" cake. Just follow the exact same instructions. Yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye.